On July 4th, Canada enacted the Digital Sovereignty Act, a landmark piece of legislation that's sending shockwaves through the tech world and beyond. This bold move is upending the digital landscape, forcing companies, governments, and citizens to rethink how data flows across borders. It's also rattling Canada's southern neighbor, the United States, which has long enjoyed a seamless digital partnership with Canada. The DSA is more than a policy tweak. It's a declaration of digital independence, a statement that Canada intends to chart its own course in the digital age. Its goal is clear: to reclaim control over Canadian data from foreign tech giants, and to ensure that Canadian laws, not foreign interests, govern the nation's digital future. The U.S. is caught off guard, unprepared for such a decisive move from its closest ally. Now, it faces the reality that a digital wall is rising along the world's longest undefended border, challenging decades of open collaboration. Headlines warn of a looming tech trade war, with experts speculating about the economic and political fallout. American officials are scrambling to assess the fallout, holding emergency meetings and consulting with industry leaders. This isn't a typical trade spat. It's a fundamental challenge to the status quo of North American digital integration. For years, U.S. tech companies have dominated the Canadian market, shaping everything from social media to cloud storage. The U.S.-Canada partnership thrived on shared digital infrastructure, mutual trust, and open networks. Now, the DSA threatens to sever those ties, raising questions about the future of cross-border innovation and cooperation. Canada's move forces a new conversation, one that extends far beyond North America. What happens when a trusted partner asserts its own digital path? The world is watching closely as other nations consider their own digital futures. Canada is testing whether middle powers can push back against American tech hegemony, and whether digital sovereignty is truly possible in a connected world. The starting gun has fired on a new race for digital sovereignty, with countries everywhere watching Canada's bold experiment. The U.S. must now decide how to respond. Will it negotiate, retaliate, or seek compromise? One thing is clear: the future of the global digital order is at stake, and the world is holding its breath. The Digital Sovereignty Act mandates that all Canadian data must be stored on servers within Canada, a seismic shift for global tech. This means that companies handling Canadian information, from social media giants to cloud storage providers, must physically house their data on Canadian soil. The move is designed to give Canadians more control over their digital lives and to ensure that sensitive information is protected by Canadian laws, not foreign jurisdictions. Foreign companies have until January 2027 to comply or risk losing access to the Canadian market. This deadline puts immense pressure on global tech firms to adapt their infrastructure and business models, potentially requiring massive investments in new data centers and legal compliance teams. The Act also introduces a 5% tax on digital revenues from large tech firms, targeting profits that once flowed south untaxed. This new tax aims to level the playing field for Canadian businesses and ensure that international companies contribute their fair share to the Canadian economy. A new regulator, the Canadian Digital Oversight Commission, will enforce these rules and audit algorithms for social impact. This commission will have the authority to investigate how tech platforms influence Canadian society, from news feeds to recommendation engines, ensuring transparency and accountability. Non-compliance means fines up to 10% of global revenue, enough to make even the biggest tech giants take notice. These penalties are among the harshest in the world, signaling that Canada is serious about enforcing its digital rules. The law also requires government cloud contracts to favor Canadian-owned firms, aiming to build a homegrown tech sector. By prioritizing local companies, the Act hopes to foster innovation and create new opportunities for Canadian entrepreneurs in the digital space. The DSA is one of the boldest assertions of digital self-interest by any Western nation. It's a clear message that Canada intends to shape its own digital future, rather than leaving it in the hands of foreign corporations. It's a blueprint for digital protectionism, one that could inspire others. As countries around the world grapple with the challenges of digital sovereignty, Canada's approach may become a model for those seeking to reclaim control over their digital destinies. The DSA has triggered a data center construction boom in Canada's major cities, creating jobs but straining power grids. Canadian cloud providers are suddenly in high demand, and venture capital is flowing into local tech startups. The Canada First policy gives domestic firms a leg up in government contracts, fueling optimism in the tech sector. But the transition is costly for businesses reliant on U.S. digital services, forcing expensive migrations and operational headaches. Civil liberties groups warn the new oversight powers could threaten privacy and innovation. Privacy advocates and U.S. tech giants find themselves unlikely allies, both wary of government overreach. The national debate: how much digital control is too much? Canada is redefining its digital future at a price. For U.S. tech giants, the DSA is a costly disruption. Companies like Google and Amazon must either build Canadian data centers or risk losing a lucrative market. The law shatters the borderless model of global data flow, forcing expensive duplication and compliance. The 5% digital tax further squeezes profits, and some firms may pass costs to Canadian consumers or scale back investment. The DSA complicates cross-border collaboration, threatening the integrated North American tech ecosystem. Sharing data and code now means navigating a maze of new rules, slowing innovation. America's role as global tech standard setter is under threat as Canada's move legitimizes digital protectionism. Other countries may follow, accelerating the rise of a fragmented splinternet. The seamless web is fracturing. America's digital supremacy is no longer assured. The stakes are global, and the consequences profound. The DSA's impact will hit some U.S. states harder than others, reshaping economic landscapes and cross-border relationships in ways few anticipated. Washington, home to tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft, faces huge costs to build new infrastructure for Canadian compliance and mounting risks to cross-border trade. The state's close proximity to Canada means even small policy shifts can ripple through local economies, affecting everything from logistics to high-tech exports. In California, tech giants and venture capitalists see their Canadian market shrinking, while agriculture could suffer if tensions escalate. The state's innovation economy, deeply invested in global connectivity, now faces new barriers that could slow growth and limit opportunities for startups and established firms alike. Michigan's manufacturing and tech sectors, reliant on seamless supply chains with Ontario, now face costly disruptions. Auto plants and suppliers could see delays and increased expenses, threatening jobs and the state's economic stability. New York's financial sector must overhaul cross-border data systems, while upstate businesses risk trade slowdowns and new regulatory headaches. The state's diverse economy, from Wall Street to rural manufacturers, is bracing for a period of uncertainty. Illinois, a major data center hub, loses a chunk of its market and faces new digital borders for its diverse economy. Companies here must adapt quickly to shifting rules or risk falling behind in the digital race. Texas, a rising tech and energy powerhouse, could see its data industry and energy ties with Canada threatened. The state's ambitions to lead in both sectors now face fresh obstacles as cross-border collaboration becomes more complex. The DSA signals Canada's willingness to act unilaterally, raising uncertainty for U.S. states deeply tied to their northern neighbor. Long-standing partnerships are now being tested, and the rules of engagement are shifting fast. For these states, the digital divide is more than a policy. It's an economic shockwave, threatening livelihoods and forcing businesses to rethink their future. The U.S.-Canada relationship is being rewritten, one server at a time, as both countries navigate a new era of digital and economic uncertainty. U.S. experts and politicians are sounding the alarm. Harvard's Dr. Susan Crawford calls the DSA a watershed moment, warning it could fragment and weaken the global internet. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce brands it an attack on free trade, predicting higher costs for consumers and isolation for Canada. Tech lobbyists urge Washington to respond, even suggesting a formal trade dispute. Politicians are split. Some admire Canada's challenge to big tech, others decry digital nationalism and demand a tough U.S. response. Analysts warn the real danger is uncertainty. Future investment and cross-border cooperation are now at risk. The DSA injects unpredictability into one of the world's most stable trading relationships. Markets and policymakers are bracing for what comes next. Canada's TSA has redrawn the digital map, forcing a reckoning for the US and the world. Will American tech giants comply, or will costs be passed to consumers? How will Canada wield its new regulatory power? The bigger question, is this the end of the open global internet? Canada's move could inspire a wave of digital nationalism, splintering the web into competing blocks. The US must confront its own protectionism, now mirrored by its closest ally. This moment could spark new collaboration, or a spiral of retaliation. The choices made now will ripple worldwide, shaping the internet's future. As digital borders rise, we must ask, what kind of internet do we want, and what are we willing to sacrifice to get it?